Hello guys, this is the final project I'm going to do for you guys. And my topic that I chose was on the Cherokee conversion to Christianity and how it affected the Cherokee, not only from a religious standpoint, but also from a cultural and belief standpoint. I'm going to do this in two different ways. First, I'm going to do it from a Christian mission settler side, then I'm going to do it from a Cherokee side. And the reason this topic is kind of important to me is I myself, being a federally recognized Cherokee from the Cherokee area, North Carolina, find this topic very, very fascinating. I can trace my lineage back to one of the bigger chiefs of the Cherokee Nation. Not that that's important or matters, because Cherokee lineage is traced through the mother's side, not the father's. But nonetheless, some important things we need to realize is that when the Cherokee were first, I'll say, discovered by the English settlers and the French settlers, they had stories of similar Christianic stories. The biggest one being of the flood. Their flood story is so similar to the Christian version, just with different characters and different names. In the Cherokee version, the flood waters come, it floods the earth, and for many nights and many days there was no land. And the Cherokees were abandoned up on a very high mountaintop where only they had survived. They sent a great buzzard, which is kind of like the Christian version of the dove, to go out and look for more land. And in the Cherokee version, the reason that the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina and the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina and Tennessee are there is every time that the buzzard's wings flapped down in a downward motion, that was a valley, and every time the wings of the buzzard went up to fly higher, that's where the mountaintops were. So that's how their story came. And there's some references in Mooney's book, which we'll reference quite a bit in this lecture, that the Cherokee had other stories that were so similar to Christianity that the missions that first got there had no other way of describing it other than prophets had been sent to them to talk to them. Different names, yes, but same idea. The biggest one being back in the late 1600s, 1700s, when they were told about the crucifixion of Christ and the resurrection of Christ. Some of the leaders told the white missions that were there that they had known of this for many years since then, that someone had came and told them when the man had passed and when the man had resurrected. So it's really kind of cool to read some of these stories. From the settler perspective, the first known Christian mission to the Cherokee, his name was Christian Piper. I assume I'm saying that correctly. He was a Frenchman. He was a Jesuit, and he put himself in Cherokee country. Excuse me, my allergies are bothering me today. He taught himself how to speak Cherokee. He had his own home, and he did not force his religion on them. He was there if they wanted to convert. He was there to teach them what they wanted to know, if they needed to know it. But as far as forcing his ideas on the people, he did not do that. As a Frenchman, when the English come in and take over that area, he was arrested by the English. He was put in a Charleston prison, and he was held there. His work made many of the early Cherokees go on and convert. The one that's most known for this, his name is Arakalakala, in the Cherokee language, or as we'll come to know him later in English as Little Carpenter. Little Carpenter was taken over to England in the mid-teens of the 1700s, where he spent almost 2 years. He was there doing pretty much work for the explorers, showing what the natives looked like. In this time, he learned how to read, speak, and write English, and he also converted to Christianity. While he was there, he met with the King of England. He also learned a trade, which was carpenter, how to build things, while he got his name. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well, but I'd like to show it to you here. As you can tell here, I have the picture of Little Carpenter, a painting that was painted in England while he was there. And as you can tell, he was probably teenager, early 20s at the time. He comes to be a huge factor in the Cherokee. In the split of the Cherokee, which we'll get into later, he is a major player in this. The first known what we'd say Christian church in Cherokee country didn't come until 1773, so it's quite a bit later. And the first permanent mission, meaning that there was somebody there all the entire time, was not until 1801, and it was Moravian. And that's going to play a very important part in our history here, because the Moravian missions had set up earlier in Ohio country with the Shawnee and the Iroquois nations. But because of what happened up there, they're going to be very, very cautious of the Moravians. And that mission was somewhere in what is now modern day Georgia, according to Mooney. Mooney also states that the Cherokee were a very religious people before even conversion started happening. They had their beliefs. Mooney also states that when the split comes, we'll talk about from the Cherokee side, that religion is one of the major factors of that split. Yes, war and land cessions was another part, but he states that the religious side of that was even more important to them in some aspects, which I think he does have a good, valid point there. I also want to mention Professor Bowes from Eastern Kentucky University, a very renowned Native American historian. In his book, Pioneers and Exiles, he talks about how the people that were crossing over the mountains themselves were not of the best religious standpoint, if you would. These are people that are being, for lack of a better word, rejected in the normal modern day society they lived in. They may not be the best perspective of what you'd want to put out there as being Christian to these natives. So they're out there trying to get land, cheat them out of trade goods, and if that's what they're seeing as being a Christian, that's kind of hard for them to take, it's hard to swallow, so it makes them realize not the best point of view for the Christianity standpoint. And that's really something that we have to take in point, that not all the time were the Cherokees given the best vantage point of what a true Christian was. Again, we look back at Bowes. Bowes also states that when the missions got there, they were so outnumbered that they had to be very careful what they said. And they were also very, very careful, according to him, how they converted. They did not want to do the Spanish style, Catholic style, where it was come into a village with the point of an axe or a gun to your head, convert or die. They very much were against that method, which I am very thankful for, because that's not a way to get true converts. That's a way to put people in fear of what you're doing. Now, religion and the Cherokee, to start off with, before all this, they were what you would call ceremonial. They had so-called gods, they had so-called beliefs, but most of their belief systems went back to a one all-being power. They didn't call him God as we do. They didn't have the name for Jesus until later on with the Cherokee language, but they did have one omnipotent power they worshipped. How they did it was a little different. They would use ceremonies, they'd use herbs, burn certain herbs and sage, send messages. They believed that the smoke from the herbs when it was burnt, you could pray to that and the smoke would rise to the Creator to give them the message. They also believed that the raven or the crow was a messenger from God. So when we see ravens and crows in Cherokee tradition, that is a special animal to be listened to. So what I want to look at now is from the Cherokee standpoint, and this is where we get a lot of really interesting stuff. Talking about the Moravians, Mooney talks about how in Ohio there was a settlement of Christian Indians in the Moravian town. In that town we have these Indians who'd given up all their traditional cultures. They were living as white people. They were farming. They had learned English. They learned how to read and write. And they were not being at war with anyone. As a matter of fact, the Moravians are a pacifist people. They don't believe in warfare, which was a major construct from Indian tradition and culture. While there, we have a group of settlers that proclaimed to be Christian. They were the Greathouse boys, Jacob Greathouse to be exact. They came into this Moravian town, gathered all of them up. They murdered several in the process. They raped women in the process, put them in the church, locked the church up, and proceeded to set the church on fire. So if you're a Native American person, especially in the Cherokee Nation, when the Moravians come in 1801, you have to be questioning what the motives are. You see that so-called Christian people have come into a so-called Christian village, which was living the way of the Christ, and they completely murdered them. So think to yourself, would you really trust them? Because I know myself, I wouldn't trust that. So the Moravian people setting up there was a major problem. And Dragging Canoe, who was Ottakalakala's son, had a major issue with this, along with land cessions that go along with it, and it starts the split in the Cherokee Nation. Now, this split occurring from Revolutionary War time all the way up until 1810, in this little carpenter, as we'll call him, has a sect that is very much going to the new style. They want to convert to Christianity. They want to cease land, move out west, and try to continue true native culture there as they see it. And you have Dragging Canoe, who is very much a traditionalist, who wants to keep all the traditional methods, traditional living, traditional blood feuds. He does not want to give up any more land, and he makes several raids on lands in what is now modern-day Tennessee, Virginia, and the Carolinas and Georgia. Many of those raids are highly successful. He is one of the most feared individuals in this area. He also has a major defeat at the Watauguan settlements, where he just doesn't have enough men. And we even believe that Dragging Canoe brought his men up to Kentucky to fight, trying to gain support. These people did not want Christianity in their lives. They wanted it to be part of the past. They wanted it to be no longer part of Indian culture. They wanted to be traditionalists, bring back the old ways, the old way of living. They said would make us all happier. So they keep going along with these strategies and techniques, and it's working for the most part. The split occurs, and we have a sect over here that is traditionalist. We have a sect over here that is modern, and it ends the autonomous Cherokee Nation. It no longer exists. We have Dragging Canoe, who breaks off to the Chickamauguans. The religious there is open to anything that you want, but Christianity is really, really frowned upon there. He keeps it open. All sorts of different tribes come into him, not just Cherokee. While Ottakalakala is on the outside looking in, going, what's happened to my people? He still is following the Christian faith, but he's losing people a lot of the time. This goes on until 1810 with the complete destruction of the Cherokee. And if we jump on ahead until the Cherokee and the land removal, the Trail of Tears, Andrew Jackson, who proclaims to be a Christian, once again goes against all Christian beliefs by removing people forcibly and illegally, I might add, off their land. There was lawsuits, as Mooney states, that the Cherokee didn't have to leave their land. It was theirs. It was theirs. And the really cool thing about Mooney is he went there in the late 1800s and interviewed these people. Some of these people still survived this. I mean, they were very, very old, but he has actual first-hand accounts in his statements. But you see how the Cherokee people felt. After Jackson, the Trail of Tears, a lot of the Cherokee people abandon Christianity. They give it up, saying, if this is what Christian people are, I don't want to be part of this. And they go back to traditional cultures. Again, these things really make the Cherokees different. There was many other different denominations coming in trying to talk to them. When we talk about the Trail of Tears and the removal, we have to remember that in the court case Worcester v. Georgia, Worcester himself is a Christian mission living in Georgia. He had bought land off the Cherokee. That was his personal land. So when Andrew Jackson says that the Cherokee have to go, Jackson said he had to give up his land too. And he sues the court, saying, this is my land, you can't make me move off of it. And Worcester wins the court case. Yet, as we all know, Andrew Jackson would not enforce it. Only Supreme Court ruling that a president has now went against. Very easy for people to understand and see how this went against things for the Cherokee and how the Cherokee distrusted religion, especially so-called Christian religions. When the Moravians came in and set up, they were very cautious as to, is this another setup as to the Moravian attack by the Great House Boys that killed so many innocent people up there. But we also need to look that the Cherokee did some gruesome things as well. They killed many innocent people as well. Sometimes they did it in the name of religion, fighting for their religion. So it was really a give and take that went both ways. The Cherokee really come back to a Christian faith belief post-Civil War, especially out in the western parts. The eastern Cherokee, there are some churches there on the reservation, but it's still highly traditionalist in many aspects of it. If you go and look there, there's a lot of traditional culture still being practiced. again, there's still some Christianity there, different faiths. Out west, it's a pretty much split down the middle. There's more Christians out there than east, but it's still pretty much split down the middle. And still today, true native people that have been there for many, many years still don't trust religion that much. Even not looking at it from a Cherokee standpoint, looking at this from a perspective of Native American history, religion's done a lot of bad things to them. The Spanish coming in killing the Aztecs with diseases and other things. Also, the Spanish coming in with knives, forcing you to convert or die. It changes a little bit with the French, with the Jesuit coming in and trying to learn the language and speaking the language and that sort. But a lot of things are done through them that makes them feel just not trustworthy. Religion is something that is very untrustworthy to the natives, and I think that's a major, major issue we have to look at. If we go to the Cherokee National website and we look on religion, their religion doesn't mention any type of set religion there. They have their traditional forms, they have Christianity, they have the churches that were there, but as far as set religious standards for Christians, it's not there. Now, one thing I do think is really cool is when Sequoyah makes the Cherokee language and syllabary so it could be written down. One of the first books printed in Cherokee was the Bible. I have a copy of that. I wish I'd brought it down with me. Written in complete Cherokee. Now, this was something that was a big deal because you have a religious book that is mainly settler European in its origins for the Cherokee perspective, being written for the first time in the Cherokee language, not their own religious stuff. So that, again, to go back to that split area in the religion, in the cultures, it has a lot to do with that. Also, I want to take my final point here is how religion completely changed the Cherokee traditional culture. It went away from being at one with nature, living off nature, being obedient and respectful to one God that lives in nature, and everything's done through Him. Sending up the smoke, sending up the sage burning, looking for ravens, traditional things, how traditional medicine such as the sweat lodge to purify. It really gets away from that. And with the English being spoken and learning how to read the English Bible, that language starts going away as well. So as the years go on and generations were not exposed to traditional cultures, you forget traditional things. So the language starts dying, and when we look back in the late 1900s, the Cherokee language was almost gone. Luckily, somebody realized this and started picking it up, writing it down, and now it's a thriving native language, and I'm very glad to say I can speak it. But had it not been for these people realizing that, it would be gone. We also have to think about how that traditional culture that we'd love to know more about. As historians, we look at Native Americans, I'd love to know why they were doing this, or why they did that, how they did this. That traditional lifestyle's gone. We don't know, and we'll never get it back because due to certain factors, Christianity and religion being one of them, they go away from it. And if you don't need it, and you don't use it, you forget it. With that being said, I really hope you enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this class immensely. I've learned a lot of things from you guys. This has been very important to me, getting this information out there, and I hope you guys learned something from it. I look forward to your comments. God bless you all, and we'll talk again.